Meve was riding at the head of the caravan when Black Rayla rode up and leaned towards her. She spoke in a whisper, a hand shielding her mouth.
Your Grace, I've something important to tell you. Yet you can't show anything to miss. Look straight ahead. Make no sudden moves.
Meve nodded slightly and waited for her to continue.
Scoia'tael scouts in the woods, watching us. Eldain's near here somewhere, preparing his attack.
So what do you propose?
Asked the Queen, her gaze fixed on the road ahead.
Let him catch us out in the open. We're sitting ducks. But there are ruins nearby, an elven cemetery. We can find cover behind its walls.
Meve was accustomed to discussing important decisions with all her advisors, but she knew there was no time for consultation now. She had to trust Black Rayla's advice, and so without further delay issued the appropriate orders. Meve's retinue reached the cemetery before dusk. Her soldiers knocked down the marble statuary and piled them into barricades, while scouts took up positions outside the walls to watch for the foe's approach. When the sun set, the woods exhaled the heat of the day, and a thick fog soon arose. Out of the mist stepped Reynard's scouts, bound and pushed forward by elves. One of the Scoia'tael, a sturdy elf with long hair, stood by the cemetery wall and cried,
I am Eldain. I would speak to Meve.
I am she. Speak.
Cadmil en Kedvagenvid, Rena. This place is of great import to us, the Enshe. I would tell you of its monuments, of the weeping Ensevern, carved by 3 generations of sculptors, or of the alabaster relief of King Kelad, so beautiful even the birds would gather to admire it. But I see your men have found our memorials, and, in the way of Dwan, destroyed them without a second thought. I cannot say this comes as a surprise. You've already shown the gods molded you from the basest of matter. You murdered injured soldiers who no longer posed you any threat. You agreed to lynch an entire village, without trial.
Get to the point, Eldain.
So I shall. As you certainly know, the necropolis is surrounded. Soon there shall be a battle. But it is unseemly to fight in a cemetery. So I ask you to come out into the open.
And surrender our tactical advantage.
I suspected a matter so impractical as respecting the dead would mean nothing to you, Dwan. So I submit one more argument. The lives of the soldiers you sent to spy. If you leave the cemetery, I shall set them free. They will fight at your side. If not, I shall kill them, here and now.
Milady, don't listen to him. He can't be trusted.
Rayla, those are good men. Fabian, Gerrit, Matthias, they've served me for a decade. They'd crawl through 7 hells for their queen. They do not deserve such a death.
I place a high value on my men's lives. Which is why I cannot risk my entire unit for a handful of soldiers.
Your Grace, please, consider.
I reject your offer, Eldain.
As you wish, Rena. Squash me.
In a swift, almost careless movement, Eldain slit the throat of the scout standing nearest to him, then gave the order to attack. After a long, bloody battle, Eldain's unit was destroyed, and Eldain himself sat at Meve's feet, defeated and dying.
To die in a cemetery. Something amusing in it, wouldn't you say?
I am surprised you are in the mood for humor.
All my tears I shed years ago. My family, killed in a massacre aimed at eradicating our race. Senseless. Utterly senseless. Reyna, we have lost. Me, my Scoia'tael, the Enshe. We shall vanish from this earth. Your grandchildren will know us in fairy tales only. Lay my bones to rest in a grave. Let me part this world with dignity. Ager Dregared.
Oh, please. How dare he? Look, he laughs, Your Grace. This dog should rot in an open field. Need I mention the willow, the many strung from it? The men he burned alive?
So be it. I shall lay you in a tomb.
Your Grace! How can you justify this? A cutthroat! A murderer!
As are you, Rayla. As am I. For centuries we fight, kill one another, shed blood for bloodshed, attack and counterattack, each act more cruel and bloody than the last. The cycle ends now. What was done I cannot undo. But I can do this. Grant a dying soul dignity.
Thank you. Vathea, Rena.
Black Rayla stormed off, shoving her way through the gathered men. Meve paid her no heed. The soldiers laid Eldane's remains in an empty crypt. The rest of the Scoia'tael they buried in a pit near the edge of the woods. The next morning, at dawn's first light, the Lyrians marched off, eager to leave the Moulderwood behind. The burning fields and orchards spewed thick black smoke, turning day into darkest night. Riding in the middle of her caravan, Meve could see neither its head nor its rear. Reynard ordered the men to keep formation and march in silence.
Eyes open, fore and aft. The foe might well use these conditions to spring a trap.
When a scout's shrill horn cut through the silence, Meve immediately galloped to the front of the column. She found herself in a pile of red-hot coals that had once been peasants' huts.
What the devil happened here?
Bodies lay amid the ashes, barefoot men in nightshirts as if caught in their sleep. Meve deemed them yet more victims of the black-clad invaders, but Gascon had another interpretation.
Look at the arrows. Imperial issue. Not hardly. Nor are they the type the Scoia'tael favour. And the tracks in the mud, the attackers fought not in formation, but man to man. Bandits. It must have been.
Reynard, standing next to him, nodded in agreement.
Gascon can be relied on here. After all, he knows of what he speaks.
An uncomfortable silence fell over the group, ending only when Meve ordered the scouts to determine the direction of the bandits' tracks. They returned to report the killers were hiding somewhere to the north. The scouts reported the bandits who attacked the village that night now occupied a fort the Adernians had hastily abandoned during their retreat.
They left crossbows, arbalists, ballistae. The bandits are armed to the teeth.
What's more, according to the local folk, they had a witch among them. In light of these reports, Meve's advisors debated whether it was worth risking a fight with the brigands.
Let's call it as it is.
Gascon said.
The game's not worth the candle.
Game?
Rayla said, struggling to swallow her anger.
They slaughtered an entire village. We cannot let them get away.
The stage seemed set for a long debate, when Meve pounded her fist on the table.
I am a queen, for God's sakes. I shall not cower before common rogues, even if the entire conclave of mages stands with them. Reynard, have the men prepare their arms.
Reynard saluted and left the tent. If one had seen him then, he would have sworn the grizzled soldier smiled to himself, beaming with pride in his ruler. They battled long and hard to take the fort. Meve could have sworn she saw bandits stalking its ramparts, bandits who moments before had taken a bolt to the head. By all rights, a mortal wound.
What the devil is going on here?
She swore as she took cover behind her shield. The secret was unraveled only after the battle's conclusion. Meve's soldiers dragged before her a grey-haired woman in coloured robes. The aura radiating from her left no doubt. They had fought a sorceress. It was her healing spells that enabled the bandits to hold off their attack for so long.
What is your name, sorceress?
Ishbel of Tretogor.
I take it you did not keep company with bandits willingly.
Not at all. They kidnapped me and forced me to aid them.
Forced? I do not understand. As a woman fluent in the arcana of magic, you could have freed yourself with little effort.
True, I could have. But I would have had to kill, and I swore never to use my talents to harm another.
Not even in self-defense.
Not even then.
Then you live in truly unfortunate times. War rages all around. You cannot hide from it.
So be it. Then I must entrust myself to the care of the gods.
Or a passing queen.
You stand before me, by divine right, ruler of Lyria and Rivia. We seek the lord of these lands, Demavend.
Oh, forgive me for not recognizing you, your grace. You do not look like a ruler. More like a mercenary.
True, I wear no crown. It was stolen from me along with my country. I strive to reclaim what was taken, and admit the help of a sorceress would prove useful.
Thank you, my lady. But you must know, an army is no place for me.
Should you wish it not, you needn't fight. We have many civilians among our ranks
who do their part in the slaughter. Indirect guilt is enough.
My soldiers do not slaughter, they fight.
Lofty words, but the result is the same. Piles of corpses.
Well, a bandit I am not. I shall not force you. Reynard, prepare the men to march on.
Of course, but if I may, perhaps Xavier might have a look at the war machines we captured. He may find some parts of use.
Neve followed Reynard's suggestion. Xavier went to work.
Yes, Your Grace.
Gods! What happened to him?
He was in Rosberg when the stronghold fell. Nearly burned alive.
How are you healing him?
The medics recommended regular poultices of dog's tallow, but whether they've any effect...
Of course they've no effect. For such wounds. How he must suffer.
In the day he reveals nothing. But at night one awakes to hear him sob with pain. You see? I need healers.
I shall go with you. But never shall I use magic to take a life. Do I make myself clear?
Yes, you have put it quite plain, and rather bluntly.
Forgive me, Your Grace. It has been long since I played the host. I forget the custom.
Your spells mean more to me than your manners. Welcome to our ranks, Isbel.
Isbel sat in one of their wagons and shut her tired eyes. Her long grey hair seemed to flutter ever so slightly, though there was neither wind nor breeze.
Mom, it's good you're here. We ought to speak.
Yes? Concerning what?
I've spent time with your troops, dressing their wounds, treating them. They respect you greatly, would follow you into any fire, any flood.
Happy to hear it. They're good folk, one and all.
Yes, precisely. In fact, too good to die in a senseless war.
Not certain I understand.
The Imperial Army's enormous. Just how enormous we know, both. Had you all the North's kings at your side, victory would still be unsure. Yet you fight alone. Know well you cannot rely on them.
Agreed. Nilfgaard's far better equipped and greatly outnumbers us. Yet, though try, they cannot be everywhere at once. They've stretched their forces thin, too thin. An error I aim to exploit.
You may be right. I hope you are. The lives of those you lead depend on it. You're proud, persistent, and sure of yourself. Just as I was at your age. It may work in your favor. Only time can tell. Meanwhile, how might I help?
You're no village witch, no healer. That much is clear. But nor do you look like our northern sorceresses.
I use no glamour, true. I've come to feel a body must age, and honestly so, as nature intended, as is the order of things.
You sound much like a druid drivelling on about balance, harmony, the good that is rot.
Rather poor, their reputation, druids. Yet they're in the right in this regard, I believe. Defy nature's laws, and nothing good can come of it.
Is that also why you wear no shoes?
Ha! No. I simply like to feel the grass between my toes, the sand, the mud. You must try it sometime.
I shall think on it. Thank you, Isbel. Duty calls. I must go.
Of course. Should you need me, I'll be here.
Maeve shook her head in disbelief as she surveyed the landscape before her. The Nilfgaardians had destroyed everything in their path. Burned farms, trampled fields, leveled orchards.
The bastards.
She hissed.
They mean to cause a famine.
When the Lyrians reached Braithwaite, a small village near Aldersburg, they saw gaunt men and women, more bone than flesh, gnawing on acorns and boot leather. The invaders had requisitioned every scrap of the village's food stores and hauled it off to their nearby camp. In strained voices, the villagers begged the Queen to help them retrieve their supplies.
Milady, frost'll come before we know it. Fail't help us. Why not a soul will live to see the thaw?
Maeve looked around at the blackened, scorched village, at the walking skeletons who dwelled in it. The suffocating smoke bellowing up from the fields sent tears streaming down her face.
I'll do what I can.
Was all she said. She knew this was not the time for a rousing speech. She needed to act. The Lyrians reached the outer defenses of the camp where the Nilfgaardians had taken Braithwaite's food stores. Rayla delivered her report.
3 heavy infantry regiments, Nazari arbalists,
The warrior said.
and I heard neighing, so they've cavalry as well.
Maeve said nothing, working it over in her head. The fate of the starving villagers weighed on her heart. But was it worth risking heavy losses to aid them?
The Nilfgaardians keep food in storage and watch it rot while peasants perish from hunger. Will we allow this?
The Queen said, addressing her soldiers. Cried the soldiers.
I didn't think so.
Maeve said with a smile as she drew her weapon.
Lyrians, attack!
Maeve managed to rout the Nilfgaardian troops and regain the stolen supplies. However, the Queen's good humor faded soon after the battle. Her soldiers began loudly demanding she not return to the village, but keep the food for her troops.
We've nigh empty bellies too, my lady. And whatever we give them, the black-clad bastards will just steal right back. Better to strengthen our own army than the enemy's.
Easy it would have been to take offense at the soldier's words, to accuse him of greed. But his words held much merit. Maeve's army had no less need for the food than the peasants, and in war-ravaged Edirn there were few chances to replenish their supplies. After a moment's hesitation, the Queen announced her decision.
We shall divide the food. Half we return to the peasants, half we keep for ourselves.
At first, the peasants were glad to see the soldiers. But their joy quickly turned to anger when they found Maeve had decided to return only half the recovered supplies.
And for a queen to stoop so low! So low! Robbing good folk! Starving good folk! Ugh!
Maeve refused to argue with the villagers. Yes, justice was on their side. But in times of war, justice counts for little. Maeve's mount reared and flattened its ears, spooked for no visible cause. Trusting in animal instinct, Maeve jumped to the ground and felt tremors under her boots. At first they were faint, barely palpable, then grew stronger and stronger.
What's going on?
Maeve cried.
Why does the earth tremble?
Before anyone could respond, a scout from the forward guard let out a terrified cry. A moment later, snapped trees crashed down around them, and out of the woods came a 30-foot-tall stone giant.
Gods,
Whispered the Queen.
what is that?
A golem,
Isbel whispered back.
favorite servant of Nilfgaardian mages.
As if to confirm his words, soldiers marched out from behind the giant, clad in heavy black plate. Their leader, however, wore but a light tunic, and his hands glowed with a strange blue light.
Dithen Quan and Lyrian!
He shouted, giving the order to attack.
Gloire and Ard Feyin!
Raising her shield against the whistling rain of arrows, Maeve fought her way towards the Nilfgaardian mage leading the attack. At close quarters, magic arcana would stand no chance against a well-swung blade.
Yeah!
Meve roared, delivering a powerful blow. Her blade severed the mage's aorta, and drowning in his own blood, he fell to the ground. He choked out by way of last words. Then the blue aura coming from his hands flickered out, and the stone giant thundered to the ground in pieces. When the dust of the battle had settled, the Queen ordered her men to search the Nilfgaardian camp. In the mage's tent, they found a rare instrument used to communicate at a distance, a megascope. The crystals encrusted in its brass frame were still warm, meaning it had recently been used to conduct a conversation. The burning question was, with whom?
Isbel!
Yelled the Queen. The mage dutifully came closer.
This device. Could you activate it?
Yes, Your Grace. But are you sure?
I am. Get to work.
Isbel nodded, then began calibrating the magic device. Finally, something clicked. A light flickered on, and before Meve's eyes appeared the outline of a Nilfgaardian general.
Speak common, please. I know not your tongue.
Oh, forgive me. I thought I spoke to someone else. Good to see you in good health, Queen. Or ex-Queen, I suppose, would be the more apt title.
Instead of fretting so much over my title, give yours.
Of course. Where are my manners? Duke Adel Ebdahi, Grand Chancellor, Commander of Army Group East. I believe you've heard of me.
Of course I have. You are the coward who, instead of facing me himself, employed traitors to do his bidding.
What you call cowardice, I call diplomacy. And you must admit this diplomacy has proven quite successful. First Lyria, then Rosberg, and southern Edirne, all taken without any real losses.
Enjoy it while you can. Easy victories are short-lived.
Is that what you think? I'm afraid you're in for an unpleasant surprise.
Is that a threat?
No. A simple prediction. Enough of this. Why use this megascope? What is it you want?
I wanted to see the man who's butchering Edirne. The man responsible for the deaths of thousands of women, elders and children.
Then your desire has been satisfied. It was I who gave the order to cleanse this land of unwanted elements, to prepare it for settlement, for...
Unwanted elements? Those are living folk you speak of.
If you were to look at this war in historical perspective, considering the wider geopolitical context, forget it. It's impossible for you to grasp. Farewell, Your Majesty. Or rather, till next time. For there will be a next time, I assure you.
A quiet fell over the tent. The Queen stepped outside, squinted her eyes against the glare of the burning fields, and swore to herself that when she did see Grand Chancellor Adel Ebdahi again, he would be a whole head shorter. Meve's Lyrians were traversing a wood when they heard the loud, drawn-out blast of a horn.
One of our scouts?
The Queen asked, clearly perplexed. She turned in her saddle to face Reynard, who shook his head.
Strange. Gascon, appoint a few of your strays. Ones who know how to blend in. Have them sniff out who blows that horn. And why.
The scouts returned a short while later with their report. Soldiers had pitched camp in a nearby meadow. They wore Edirnian uniforms, cut by sashes bearing a golden sun. They addressed their leader as Fulberson.
Know the name?
Rayla said.
Fulberson went over to the enemy first day of the war, took his whole division with him. Your Grace, a chance like this won't come again. Let's teach the traitors a lesson.
We must send a strong signal, one all the North will hear. From the Yaruga to the Dragon Mountains.
announced the Queen.
Whoever collaborates with the invader shall pay with his head. Prepare to attack.
Rayla nodded, clearly pleased. The Lyrians surrounded the meadow marked by their scouts. Moments later, a flaming arrow pierced the sky, giving the signal to attack. The traitors, perhaps used to fighting unsuspecting foes, stood no chance against the determined Lyrian attack. At its conclusion, Meve personally knocked Fulberson off his mount, then tore off his visor. The face she saw evoked more sympathy than hatred. Fulberson was an old, sickly man, his skin pale and blemished. With great difficulty, he pulled himself up on his knees, then extended a shaky hand in pleading.
Your Grace, have mercy. The Nilfgaardians forced me to treason. They threatened torture.
Meve felt her soldiers' eyes on her. They awaited her decision. How would she treat this traitor? Would she really execute him as a warning to others?
I hereby dissolve your division, Falberson. And you, surrender your sword and be on your way.
The traitor threw himself at the Queen's feet.
You've shown mercy befitting a truly great ruler, Your Grace. 1,000 thanks. To the south of here lie my lands. Visit me. I shall throw a sumptuous feast in your honor and provide a generous donation to your fight against our common foe.
Meve ordered Fulberson to stand. Her Lyrians reluctantly stepped out of the departing traitor's way. When he passed Black Rayla, she spat at his feet. Meve and her Lyrians arrived at Fulberson's lands, home of the traitor she had let live. He greeted the Queen with full honors. In ceremonial garb, a platter of bread and salt held aloft.
Your Grace, 'tis an honor to welcome you to my humble abode. Please, come inside. A fattened piglet already turns on the spit. Soon I shall fetch my best wines from the cellar.
Meve, having lived on nothing but salt pork and gruel for weeks, was tempted to accept the offer. Black Rayla, however, was strongly against it.
Ma'am, forgive my insolence, but to eat from a traitor's table is foolish. Don't do it.
Heeding Rayla's plea, the Queen declined Fulberson's invitation. Clearly saddened, he escorted the Queen to the bounds of his estate.
I thank you once more, Your Grace.
He said, bending to kiss her hand.
And I swear from now on, I shall support the North as best I can.
Meve nodded, then went on her way. She wondered whether the old man would keep his word, or, as soon as the Lyrians disappeared over the horizon, once again don an imperial crested sash. Coming across a small brook, Meve ordered her soldiers to replenish their water supplies. When they returned, it was with empty water skins and troubled expressions.
Milady, the water tastes of blood. Not like black pudding, mind, but rancid, filthy.
Meve had no choice but to march on. She gulped dryly and wondered how to interpret this strange event. An omen, perhaps? A warning from the gods? She soon learned the truth. Following the brook upstream, the Lyrians arrived at a small pool. Bobbing on its surface were dozens of corpses. A young woman caught Meve's gaze, her long hair spread delicately atop the water, wide-open eyes reflecting the sky, a fine nose peppered with freckles, and a gaping wound slashed across her throat.
We shall stop here,
The Queen said calmly.
and give these souls a proper burial. Reynard, send scouts. Tell them they are not to return until they ascertain what has happened here.
When the scouts returned a while later, they brought with them a barefooted peasant they'd found hiding in the woods. They claimed he hailed from Horton, a nearby village, the village whose inhabitants had been murdered.
Them black-clad wretches stormed the village, milady. The devil free gave at the fore. Rounded us right up, took us down to the lake. Whole village mind. Then chop, chop, and splosh, splosh. 'Twas I alone gave him the slip.
Meve listened to the man's tale, then placed him in the care of her medics and ordered the Lyrians to break camp. She rode at the head of their column, Reynard at her side, her knuckles gripped white on the reins.
Do we know where this Frigef is stationed?
Our riders report he's pitched camp to the east.
Then let's pay him a call.
The Lyrians had no trouble finding Frigef's camp. It was the size of a sprawling town. Niamh stopped her caravan and called for a council. The first to speak was Reynard.
Seems our scouts were both right and wrong, Your Grace. They did pinpoint General Frigef, the Butcher of Horton. Unfortunately, they underestimated his detachment. It is much larger and better armed than our own.
That changes nothing.
Niamh said, forestalling all protest.
If I leave him unpunished, without so much as an attempt, I shall never be able to face my reflection again. We must attack.
Reynard bowed and passed the order to the Lyrians. Later that same day, Niamh and Frigef's forces stood face to face on the field of battle. The Lyrians won the day, despite their foe's distinct advantage. Historians later ascribed Niamh's victory to her light troops' superior maneuverability in the difficult terrain compared to the plate-clad Nilfgaardians. But if you ask me, that wasn't it at all. A storm of fury had been quietly gathering in the Lyrians' hearts, a squall of rage stoked by the Nilfgaardians' unparalleled cruelty towards the conquered. And no one embodied this barbarism more perfectly than General Frigef. Niamh's men were ready to sacrifice anything to see him punished. They dragged the defeated general before Niamh. The Queen wished to learn why he'd ordered the execution of an entire village, how the Nilfgaardians could possibly justify such a crime.
2 weeks prior, I'd sent a detachment to Horton to procure feed. Captain Gaynor commanded it. While he was verifying their grain stores, they barricaded him in the barn and put it to flame.
The Queen listened to the general's story, her face a mask, betraying nothing.
Murdered. One man was murdered.
Frigef raised his eyes to Niamh's. The Queen was surprised to see them wet with tears.
Yes, my lady. My son.
The general's simple words bore pain, grief, and a thirst for revenge that would never be slaked. The Queen had to decide what to do with Frigef. No doubt the general had earned punishment, the harshest possible at that. Yet, such a weighty personage could fetch a hefty ransom, and Niamh's army desperately needed the gold.
My father taught me to respect the generals of my enemies. That even in captivity, their arms should not be taken from them. Their guards should greet them in salute.
The Queen said.
But you, Frigef, you are no general. Merely a cutthroat dressed as one. You shall die like the good folk of Horton. Quickly. Summarily.
Frigef received the Queen's decision with sang-froid. He neither struggled nor begged for mercy. He simply laid his head on the trunk. A short moment later, it rolled onto the ground to the Lyrians' deafening applause. As Niamh passed the city of Harmelin, one of the peasants she'd saved from Nilfgaardian captivity requested an audience.
Be taking leave of you here, my lady. Folk from our parts lives in Harmelin. We'll manage. But, my lady, we thank you for taking pity on us, time and again. We've nothing, my lady, or near's enough. Black-clad bastards took all's worth taking. Except in this amulet. Been in my family for ages, kept us from harm. May it do the same for you.
Niamh wanted to say she did not believe in peasant superstitions, but when she took the ivory pendant in hand, she felt a curious warmth from it. The peasant bowed, then joined the others as they trod off towards Harmelin. The Lyrians stood within 5 miles of Aldersburg, when the road, which until now they had travelled alone, suddenly filled with all manner of folk. Peasants, merchants, and wounded fighters in tattered uniforms. They trod solemnly in the opposite direction, their worldly possessions on their backs.
Aldersburg's fallen, my lady.
Sighed one of the refugees with a forlorn shrug.
Outer walls breached. King still defends the old town, but black-clad goats are winning. You'd best turn back before it's too late.
We've nowhere to turn to, good man.
the Queen said, then spurred on her horse.
Follow me!
The Queen galloped so fast the wind squeezed tears from her eyes, the Lyrian cavalry close at her heels. Hoofbeats thundered down the high road, and the crowd of refugees parted, making a path for the charging riders.
Faster! Faster!
Soon they set eye on Aldersburg. A red glow filled the horizon, the wind carried screams and the clanking of steel. The once proud city was quickly turning to dust in the Nilfgaardian sun. The Nilfgaardian force moved to block the Lyrians' way. Without slowing, Meve cut down the infantryman who tried to drag her from her saddle with a hook. Her head in a winged helmet fell to the ground, leaving a bloody track.
Lyrians! Attack!
Meve shouted.
Take no prisoners!
The Lyrians managed to scatter the Nilfgaardian battalion, one of many besieging Aldersburg. Their scouts brought before the Queen a prisoner freed from the invaders. Meve inquired about the situation in the city.
Turned a right slaughterhouse it has. The Imperials, they... King had the city cleared, my lady, but didn't budge himself. Holding out with his guard in Old Town, walls still standing there. Said he'd fight to the end, come what may.
Meve weighed her options. The situation looked dire. Demavend, to whom she had come for help, needed help himself. Nilfgaard enjoyed an overwhelming advantage. The small Lyrian detachment stood no chance of breaking the siege. But to retreat, surrender, that was not something Meve did.
The Nilfgaardians do not expect a relief force. Rayla, you know Aldersburg. Can you lead us by side streets to the Old Town, that we may avoid the largest part of the Nilfgaardian army?
The warrior nodded, and without waiting for any further orders, strode out in front of the party. Reynard followed her with his gaze, clearly troubled.
And what then, Your Majesty? We burst into the lion's den and...
And we pray the lion chokes. Follow me! Gods have mercy. And demons take it all!
Taking advantage of the confusion, Meve maneuvered her troops to the very walls of the Old Town. Spying Lyrian banners, the defenders suspected a trap. But when they noticed Black Rayla among them, they immediately lowered the drawbridge. The Old Town was a maze of brothels and shady taverns. In normal times, students and other pleasure seekers prowled its dark alleys. Now, tired soldiers slumped in every corner, though the Lyrians' arrival clearly buoyed their spirits. The Fraternal Realm's warriors clasped each other's hands and swapped tales. Even Edirn's king, Demavend, made no secret of his pleasure at seeing these unexpected arrivals.
Meve, of all the besieged cities in all the world, you walk into mine. Come to the rescue, have you?
To be quite frank, I've come to be rescued.
Oh, yes. I've heard much of the events in Lyria. Disgraceful. Such betrayal. However, as you might have noticed, things are none too rosy here either.
Yes, that is hard to miss.
I thought we'd trade blows with the Blackclads. That it would be an even match. 2 weeks. That sufficed to annihilate the army I'd spent my whole lifetime building.
Your Majesty, I cannot say what fate will bring, if we shall reach this war's end alive. But I wish to say now that I admire you.
Oh?
You evacuated the city, yet refused to evacuate yourself. You fight to the bitter end, like a hero.
But of course. A king must lead by example, after all. Especially in war.
Reynard, that rumbling, you hear it? Studded boots on cobblestones. The Nilfgaardians. Prepare the men for battle.
Yes, Your Grace.
So, now that we're alone, what's really going on?
What? Did you not hear? I'm defending my capital. Like a hero.
Demavend, please, don't feed me that drivel. We've known each other far too long. Why did you stay?
Meave. As meddling as you are beautiful.
See that building? That one there.
The brothel? The Crimson Bodice?
Precisely. So, but promise not to laugh. I'm a patron. A loyal one, in fact. One of the girls there, Demeretta. She's marvelous. Makes me feel young again.
A young fool, you mean? Demavend, there's a war on, and...
Allow me to finish. Demeretta became, well, with child. Exactly 9 months ago. Understand now?
She's entered confinement. Having contractions.
Since yesterday. You see, I cannot leave her like this. Can't have her moved. I must stay put until she gives birth.
And then what? Pray tell. Invite all of Nilfgaard to the christening?
No, my dear. There is a hidden tunnel deep beneath the city, leading far beyond its walls. Once the midwives cut the cord, we flee.
Demavend, you risk the lives of thousands of men for a single child? For a bastard to boot?
Meave, I would kill thousands of men for my child. Born in wedlock or out, it changes nothing.
It changes everything. One way the babe inherits the throne, the other...
You argue succession while I speak of a father's love. But I shouldn't expect you to understand. Your heart, ice through and through, always has been. No wonder, villain.
Your Majesties, the Nilfgaardians are attacking.
Meave, we must hold out. A few hours, that's all.
I'll do what I can.